Hey everybody, and welcome to the Hash. Zack, Seward, how you doing? We're joined by Naomi, Brockwell, Will Foxley, Christine Kim, and the always wonderful Ben Powers. Welcome back, Ben. We're glad to see you. Let's get going with this thing. All right, Naomi, you're leading us off today. Is that right? Tell us what's going on.
I'm leading us off. I just want to start by saying you're all always wonderful. We're not picking favorites here. Ben is great, but you're all always wonderful. So
Everyone's
now
a
we
winner.
got that out of the
Absence
way.
makes the heart grow fonder. Come on.
Everyone's a winner.
Welcome
I
back,
can't
Ben.
shout out my guy, Ben, my special guy. Come on. Anyway,
All right.
sorry.
First of the day, Bitcoin dips below 32K as the Fed hike bets rise. So basically, people are predicting that the Fed is going to be raising interest rates. They think this is going to happen at the end of the year end of 2022, I believe, into the start of 2023. And because of these bets, people are saying that that's why Bitcoin has dipped. It's an interesting idea that I want to kind of throw to the group, see if you agree with this as being the reason why Bitcoin has dipped, because we actually haven't seen gold do the same thing. And usually if this was something that was going to affect the markets, you would see this in other assets that behave similarly to the way that we are saying Bitcoin behaves. We're saying that it's a store of value. We're saying gold is a store of value, except gold has held its value in this. So it's kind of interesting to see what's going on there. Also interesting to think about the Fed raising interest rates. I would love thoughts from the group about what this all means. Christina, I'm going to throw it to you to start off with. What does this drop in price mean to you, and what does this potential raising of interest rates mean?
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of Bitcoin dropping in value, I've been thinking about this ever since the news came that inflation is at its highest point in 13 years, and how Bitcoin even then didn't really respond positively in price, even though so many people think of it and toot it as this hedge against inflation. I feel like the narrative around Bitcoin as a safe haven asset is not quite, maybe it's not as strong as we think, or as widely held by professional investors as the crypto community thought, given its reaction to not just today's news, but also, yesterday's news with inflation being at all-time highs. And then on the topic of interest rates potentially going up at the end of the year, I thought it was interesting that Jerome Powell's statements today were super vague. He talked about, in the longer term, it's okay if we keep inflation moderately higher than 2%, and that inflation can continue will average out over the long term back to 2%. And in my head, I kept thinking, well, any spikes in inflation, if you average it out and look far enough ahead, are going to trend back down. So I was like, these statements are very concerning to me because they don't address the issue of rising inflation today, and it sugarcoats the issue. Instead of really thinking about, will the economy naturally start to cool down? Without some kind of intervention, we know that the markets are more of a boom and bust cycle, not really like a calm downward trend ever. So those were definitely like some concerns of mine when I was thinking about, there wasn't really much direction of, we are going to do this, we are going to raise interest rates at the end of 2021. It was more like, well, let's start to think about this more of the longer term. And it really reaffirmed to me that I think the Fed is admitting that it's kind of powerless right now to do anything about this inflation going out of control.
Yeah, it's such a good point about the adjustable average rate of inflation. When he first announced that, I believe it was the start of this year. And everyone was kind of like, what does that mean? Because he, as you said, he never set a time period over which this would be averaged. So it's such a vacuous statement. And just I just wanted to point out, it's end of 2022 that they said that people are predicting that they might raise rates again. The Fed hasn't actually confirmed or denied. This is just what the market is thinking is most likely to happen. Will, I'm going to throw this to you. What's the future of Bitcoin look like if this is no longer considered to be an inflationary hedge?
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to echo what Christine said. I think that was very well said, and just echo her thoughts there. I think in general, like you said a second ago, Naomi, we're asking about one oligarch's opinion on the economy, like Jerome Powell. Compare that to Bitcoin, where Bitcoin has a set issuance schedule. Bitcoin has a peer-to-peer network. Bitcoin just keeps rocking and rolling, doing its own thing, regardless of any intervention from outside forces. So I think in the long run, that obviously is a little bit more stable than just inputs from a random political official who was appointed to the head of the top bank in the US. In terms of Bitcoin's price, I think we just kind of see that Bitcoin is still kind of a meme. Like, as much as we would like it to be a real asset class, as much as we hope it is one day, or at least I do personally, right now it's not there. There's not enough people who hold it. There's not enough people who are actively using it. There's not enough people who are actively trading it and hedging using derivative instruments on a bunch of different exchanges. One day we're going to get there, and it's quickly approaching that, like the market cap of gold. But for now, I think just price, it's kind of a discussion of trading as opposed to just financial policy of the US in general. But tossing it back to you.
Will, not a real asset class? It's not a real, yes, it's a real asset class.
It
it's
is
real,
asset
it's
class,
there,
but it's also...
But it's new. I get your point. Like, it's new. It's like
Yes,
still this
yes.
fledgling, area that people are,
It's a baby.
a lot of the market still hasn't tapped into. It is a baby. We'll coddle it and make it grow. But yeah, I agree that I definitely see a bright future. And I also, it's a great point about it just becoming more and more decoupled from whatever some elites in an office decide to do with the money supply. It's eventually just going to become so decoupled that people won't even care, I think, in the future, what these people are doing, because they're going to be part of this system that is a lot more reliable and predictable, which is the whole reason for Bitcoin's predictable inflation schedule. But let's change track here and go to something a little bit different. Who's got the next story here?
That's me. You guys can't get away from me. I'm just going to keep talking. So actually, pretty similar stories here, but on a different front. So instead of talking about the Fed, we're going to move over to Europe, where they're talking about launching their digital euro project a little bit ahead of time. Christine Lagarde, who heads the ECB, tweeted this morning that they are moving forward on this project a little quicker than anticipated. Of course, they've been on the forefront as concerns Western countries on developing a digital currency or a central bank digital currency. Of course, China already has some products on the ground working. Korea also has a few products out there. A few other nations do as well. But the ECB itself, like, that's probably the largest economic bloc to be testing a product like this in the near future. I mean, we've raised these concerns a lot of times on the show. There's the ability to look at privacy, or privacy is impacted with a digital currency like this. And then there's more control of the monetary policy. So fits tightly with what we were just talking about. But Naomi, I want to get your thoughts on this topic.
You just want me to rant again, Will. That's what this is.
I really just want you to rant. Can you just go?
It's just a rant. I'll just go. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the show. There are just epic privacy concerns. There are epic, financial sovereignty concerns when you start to move into central bank digital currencies. So, the fact that more and more countries are moving ahead with this, you got South Korea that's moving ahead with this, is becoming less theoretical. They're actually moving into the implementation stage. You got other countries doing this too. I think we need to come to terms with the new reality that is our world. When people are talking about anonymity and the right to financial privacy, everyone always goes to cash and says, like, well, ultimately that's the best thing. Next best thing is privacy coins. And, Bitcoin is okay, but, it's only pseudonymous, and that pseudonymous link is very fragile, can easily be broken. But the new reality is that, have you ever tried just living in cash? Anyone on the show? Because it's really tough. I'm going through an experiment right now, and it's not working out well. The second you try to cash out your paycheck in cash rather than use your debit card, suddenly your bank is going to start doing all kinds of weird things. So this idea that we still have cash as this backbone of society, we can still use it, we can still retain control over our finances, is rubbish as soon as you try it. So I am terrified of these new central bank digital currencies. I'm terrified that we're moving into more of this programmable, controllable monetary world where, yes, people, they will be able to potentially, in theory, make the coins in your bank account worthless if you keep them there too long and don't spend it and put it into the current economy. This is what China is saying that it wants to experiment with doing, automatic deductions from your bank account, easier to seize money and all of this. So yeah, I'm not excited about this world. And that is why I'm so excited about decentralization and the world of cryptocurrency. But Zach, I saw your hand go up, so I'll throw to you.
I have no interest in the ECB. I just want to know about this bank experiment that you're doing. going. Wait, what happens? Do you get like AML checks if you
find
try to
out
cash
about
your
it
paycheck?
soon.
Like, what's
You'll
going
find out
on?
about it soon. It's
Wow,
intense.
okay.
Just try it, guys. Here's a challenge to anyone who's watching. Your next paycheck, instead of cashing it out, just go to your bank and say, instead of depositing it, just say, I'd like to take this out in cash. See what happens.
What happens? I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
I need to know. All right, well, all right, okay.
I'm inspired by Snowden, right? In his memoirs, he talked about how he got back from this stint in Japan and got really, really concerned about surveillance and was like really in that world. And then he decided, he's not doing anything wrong, but he's like, listen, I'm moving house. I'm going to buy all my furniture using cash and all this. And it's fascinating to me, like 10 years ago, this was possible, right? That you were able to actually buy furniture with cash, because furniture's like thousands of dollars. I challenge people to try that today and see if you can actually get that amount of money out of your bank account and use it for goods or services. I don't think it's possible anymore.
Furniture, I want to hear Christine's thoughts really quick. Money laundering. And I have a question for Naomi.
Yeah.
The bet is on. I think this is a challenge to everyone, just like a call to like try it.
Newsflash, everyone's accounts get shut down. I'm like, sorry guys, didn't mean to do that.
But I will say, let's not raise the alarm bells now of these digital currencies run by banks taking over the world, because in this announcement, they said that their investigation phase for this entire project is 24 months. That's 2 years. And then this is not the first time that the ECB has talked and goaded people about this potential digital euro project. Last November, the president of the ECB said that they're going to launch a digital version of the euro within 2 to 4 years. And I feel like this announcement talking about, well, now we've moved from the discussion phase to an exploration phase, and now we're going to go into an investigation phase, is all it's just like fancy language to say that we're talking about, but we're not really doing anything about it.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to do something about it. We're going to take a break. We are breaking, guys. Let's take a break. After the break,
say it again,
we are going to
Zack.
talk about SHAPESHIFT. That's what we're going to talk about after the break. And then we're going to talk about how SHAPESHIFT, a storied crypto exchange from Will's home state of Colorado, is decentralizing itself out of existence by way of a massive airdrop. We will talk about that next after the break. Talk to you soon.
CoinDesk indexes, the market standard for crypto assets since 2014. Our trusted data powers billions in publicly traded funds. CoinDesk indexes are the standard used by institutions, and they're the key for investors looking to understand and access crypto markets.
As the company that launched the world's first ever Bitcoin ETF, we at Purpose chose the CoinDesk Bitcoin Price Index, the XBX, to price our assets.
CoinDesk indexes enabled the early adopters to build crypto investment vehicles, and they're already trusted by a new generation of global investors.
And welcome back to The Hash, where we discuss the latest and greatest in crypto news. In very late and great crypto news, just now, breaking this morning, the exchange SHAPESHIFT is closing its doors and handing over its legacy to a decentralized autonomous organization, commonly known as a DAO, controlled by holders of the Fox token. Now, over the coming months, they're going to be rolling out airdrops and other sort of things while kind of shuttering their corporate operations, such that there is no kind of holding company for this, this exchange and everything else generally, and yet again, sort of shifting the shape of what this is becoming. But it's a really interesting idea and a really interesting experiment, because we talk all the time about decentralization and taking that to the furthest extent a lot of the time in crypto. And this is kind of, we're watching this and we're going to be watching this happen in real time. But Will, I want to get your thoughts initially on this one.
Oh, my thoughts initially. So, I have a lot of different opinions on this. So SHAPESHIFT is like an OG in the space. There's a lot of people who love SHAPESHIFT. There's also a lot of people who don't like SHAPESHIFT. I think that Eric Voorhees has done an amazing job kind of wading through the challenges that come with being in the cryptocurrency space for so long. He's been through a lot of the political battles, and I think he's necessarily kind of ended up on the right side of most of them. And even when things didn't end that way, he's still just like a leader in the space. So tons of respect for him on that front. In terms of like transitioning totally to a decentralized finance exchange with SHAPESHIFT, which is his lead product, that's an interesting call only a year after DeFi really exploded. I think it shows that he's really willing to be aggressive with the products that he brings to market. And that's always a bonus for anyone who's leading a product like this, especially in the crypto space. but I don't think centralized exchanges are going anywhere for quite a while. So I was interested to see that he decided to swap all the way to full DEX, dilute everything, move away all the key components of a corporation, and then even issue tokens to everyone instead of like equity or even just like normal payouts and salary to staff so quickly, only a year after DeFi went mainstream. I mean, the competition is there also, like we talked yesterday in the show. Uniswap has 3 million users and they have a significant moat around themselves and they're only adding better tech. So why would someone go to something like SHAPESHIFT? I think I can hear the answer from Naomi before it comes, and that's there's a multi-chain future. And something like Uniswap does not provide that right now. And with Ethereum maximalism on the rise, that may never happen with an application like with Uniswap or other Ethereum-based DEXs. And SHAPESHIFT might be that answer, especially because they're so friendly with ThorChain. So that's my overview of it. But Naomi, can I give it to you after I kind of deflated your attack?
Yeah,
Right.
no, there's no attack here, Will. I just want to say that I am so excited and proud of SHAPESHIFT. They have been such fighters in this space. They have pushed back. They have been fighting with governments behind the scenes, it seems, for a really long time. When the government forced them, even though they weren't custodying anyone's money, to get a money transmitter license, they then decided to go completely open about how much data was being collected about users and was just like, we are now a KYC platform, to get rid of any pretense that, people could use it. I mean, I just really like the principle behind that they were just very open in warning consumers about this. And then they went and started a decentralized trajectory when they got rid of their money transmitter license. I think they're the only company that I know of, perhaps the first company in existence to actually want to give back their money transmitter license. And I think this expired maybe like a month ago. And so they just said, listen, we're not custodying anyone's funds. We're no longer KYC. And now they're taking it to another extreme where they're saying, now we're shutting down the company. We're getting rid of employees. We're getting rid of bank accounts. We're getting rid of anything that is centralized. And he basically said, if we're not living by this ethos, we're all LARPing. We all talk about decentralization, but as long as we are still living in this mindset of these centralized entities that are controlling things and gatekeeping things, then we're not really executing the potential of this decentralized future. So hats off to him. I think this is like the largest airdrop in history. They've been throwing out these air tokens to Uniswap, ThorChain, Gitcoin, Aave, Balancer, SushiSwap, Ion Finance, Compound Maker, Alchemix, 1inch, 0x, Curve Finance, Badger DAO. They're sending it to their employees as well and other people. I think that's awesome. And I love the respect that they're giving to the DeFi community for being trailblazers. Eric Voorhees has always spoken so highly of what Uniswap has done, in that they're just such trailblazers. They changed the paradigm and they created a system that added liquidity to DeFi. We had this liquidity-less system for a long time where it's like, yeah, DeFi is a thing we could maybe do. And Uniswap come along and kind of take on this Bancor model, but really take it to the extreme. And just suddenly there's so much liquidity, people pouring money in, and DeFi became a reality. And they started that. And I love that they're giving a hat tip to these trailblazers. And now they're following the lead and giving back to the community. I just think that it's awesome. I want to see what SHAPESHIFT does next with their whole decentralized future. But I know it's going to be awesome, especially with Eric at the helm.
Yeah, and there are a couple of different challenging things that would be difficult to work out with a DAO. But I know Eric was saying to our colleague Brady Dale in this piece that he's really kind of relieved about this in some ways and wants to get out of the bureaucracy that this corporation is sort of like set up and trying to push this thing forward. And Naomi, you outlined some of the history of different changes that they've had to make in relation to regulatory concerns and other things like that. And Will, to your point around like, how employees and stuff are going to be, could get payouts and alternative models, I think employees are going to get about 34% of the airdrop of this. So they're going to have a sizable sort of stake in this DAO in a variety of different ways. And I think importantly to mention too is that once this airdrop does happen, users are going to have to claim their tokens within 90 days. That's really important. So just putting parameters on, people are going to be sent these, you do need to claim them with a certain amount of time to have a stake in it. But that being said, not financial advice. But Zack, take us to Compass Mining, which Will has absolutely no involvement in.
Compass Mining. I've heard about this. Interesting. Yeah, we heard this morning that Compass Mining has inked a deal with this nuclear microreactor firm by the name of OKLO. These are folks that use nuclear waste to build small nuclear power plants as opposed to the large power plants that you may be familiar with. And it represents another sort of novel twist on seeking clean energy to power Bitcoin mining operations. Will had nothing to do with this, by the way. I just wanted to kind of put him on blast a little bit. But we do have Will here at our disposal, so maybe he has some extra juice for us. Will, I think this is actually quite interesting, and I think we've seen a couple of stories in recent weeks with sort of nuclear kind of coming into the conversation as it relates to Bitcoin. Of course, this is in the context of Bitcoin mining coming under fire for its carbon emissions. Talk to me about the choice. I don't know if you were privy to any of these conversations, but talk to me about the decision that was made here. You know, Compass is committing some significant resources to finding clean, cheap energy on the carbon side. Obviously, there's other sort of like downstream effects of nuclear, but on the carbon side, clean, cheap energy to power mining operations going forward. What was that discussion like? How did this come to pass?
Yeah, so just I guess a disclosure, work for Compass as editorial director, so there's that. On the nuclear side, I think it's actually a lot more common than people know of, and that's because the U.S. energy grid and energy grids all around the world have nuclear components. Just depends on where you're at. So, for example, South Carolina, huge majority of the energy produced there is nuclear, and there's a lot of Bitcoin mining in that state, just because nuclear energy is quite cheap compared to other things. Like you said, Zach, carbon offsets for nuclear quite lower than you're getting from like coal, or even from something like solar power plants, which have to use carbon at some stage because they're manufactured typically through coal power. Nuclear power plants, a lot cheaper in that sense, or on the carbon side. There are some other downstream effects, like what do you do with this waste uranium? And OKLO has a really interesting way of reusing waste energy, and they've already done that in Idaho, where they have a power plant working with that state. And they try to use like really small power plants. So that's compared to typically, you know, you have this idea of like the 3 Mile Island or whatever that is in Pennsylvania, where you have these huge power plants that take years upon years to build, take lots of government intensive resources to finalize across the finish line. Here, OKLO is a VC-backed firm from San Francisco. They build these little log cabin designed kind of ideas for nuclear power plants, and they can plop them basically anywhere using you reuse uranium, and then you have a few megawatts for a town. And here, Compass decided that why not plug in a few Bitcoin miners. What we do is provide stable rates for OKLO. It's pretty good for them because they always have a customer. And as they kind of get bootstrapped over the next few years, because they're still in the VC stage, they have a customer. So I'd expect it to keep growing. I know that in Ohio, there was another deal signed, I think last week, with a nuclear power plant to provide Bitcoin mining and nuclear energy. But to you, Naomi?
Yeah, I think that this is awesome. I'm really excited to hear this, and I think that there should be more of it. Nuclear power is awesome, so much better for the environment than fossil fuels. I would have loved to have seen us explore thorium reactors more. That never really ended up happening, but now we're going into like micro reactors, so we'll see what happens there. One thing, I mean, you look at places like New Hampshire where you've got nuclear power plants as well. I think Bitcoin is really interesting because, as we've talked about before, you know, energy is not fungible, and sometimes you can have excess energy that won't fit onto the grid. Now, when you have a power plant, this becomes difficult, right? Like in New Hampshire, more and more people going to green energy. You've got these nuclear power plants. If they have energy they're producing that they can't fit onto the grid, they can't just turn off the nuclear power plant. So what happens to that excess energy? Like, you know, and it's a very interesting question. So the more we can sort of popularize this idea that Bitcoin mining can go to these areas, I think it's going to be really good for the industry. I think it's going to be really good for the energy grid and all of that. So yeah, good work, Compass, for looking into this and exploring this world.
I mean, I will say the two words of nuclear power and VCs coming together is a terrifying combination to me in a variety of different forms, but that's fine. You know, venture-backed nuclear power companies is not exactly what I want roaming the country and just being plopped down places. That being said, I do think that this is an interesting kind of another element of this, climate change narrative that we're seeing around Bitcoin mining. We talked about the price kind of being buffeted earlier and going down, and that's obviously, you know, the climate conversation has been a big part of that in a variety of different ways as sort of institutional investors and unfortunately figureheads like Elon Musk sort of pop off about it. But I think that, you know, we talked about coal waste being used for Bitcoin mining, we talked about nuclear being used for Bitcoin mining. And so we're continuing to see like different options tried out. And I certainly think it's worth experimenting with as we look for a more sustainable solution in all these regards.
Yeah, Bitcoin sort of becoming a side business of the power plant industry. I think that's really quite interesting, and we're seeing some momentum there. All right, well, we'll leave the mining conversation, and we will hit the road. Christine, what do you got?
Yeah, so for our final story today, I thought we'd keep it very light. This is just a fun story about this Binance-backed blockchain-based travel company, Travala, that went from making thousands of dollars to millions of dollars in revenue in just 1 year. So the company recently released a quarterly report in which they say their revenue rose 141% from April to June as countries around the world have started to ease COVID-19 restrictions. So air travel in general is starting to pick back up again. And the CEO of Travala had said that he does expect revenue to just be like 7-8 times higher than last year's when everybody was under lockdown and probably very depressed. And the reason why I bring this up is it's cool that a lot of the cash, a lot of the profits that Travala is earning is from cryptocurrency. 70% of purchases on Travala are paid for in crypto, and Travala accepts over 40 cryptocurrencies for hotel stays, flights, experiences directly from its platform. So it's this perfect example of where cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology could start to go mainstream in an industry that isn't finance. I'm sure we've all seen headlines of blockchain can revolutionize healthcare, real estate, identity, and all these kind of like wild dreams, but it is kind of hard to find a real example of where that's actually happening beyond like a prototype. So I do think Travala is making big waves in letting people fly around the world with their crypto. But yeah, any other industries that you guys think or you guys see blockchain and crypto making real progress in? I'll throw that one to Naomi.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like Travala isn't the first one to do this. I believe Expedia many years ago accepted Bitcoin. I don't remember when they stopped. They stopped around the same time everyone stopped accepting Bitcoin. But it's interesting that now we have companies like Travala that are like, no, we are 70% crypto in terms of our clientele, and they're really focused on that, which is really cool to see. There's a company I believe they're still doing the same thing. They're called Winding Tree, but like around 2016, 2017, they were in the travel industry as well, but rather than looking at commercial flights, they were looking at a way to get data about flights to alternative websites, maybe like Travala or other companies. The thing that was an issue is that there is a bottleneck when it comes to data from flights, about the flights and about costs of them and seats available, all that. How do you create a system where all of these networks can talk to each other? And then you kind of have these few websites like Expedia that own all these other websites, like you talk about Kayak and all of these alternatives, and they're basically owned by, I think it's 3 companies, all of these alternatives. And so they really do have this stranglehold on this data. And if you want to book something, you generally have to go through them. So Winding Tree was looking at like, how do we put this on the blockchain instead? How do we get this open so that anyone can plug in and create an alternative system? That was kind of interesting. And I really like that. They had like a partnership with Lufthansa and all kinds of things. But that type of application of blockchain technology is definitely really interesting. I'm keeping an eye on, as well as just like the commercial, like consumer side of purchasing things.
Yeah, definitely. Anything on like the privacy front? Like, are we going to see a blockchain McAfee? I don't think I'm saying that company right, but like these kinds of companies, Ben.
I mean, there are a few out there that are looking at some models in that regard. They're more sort of like malware detection and looking at the ways that they behave than they are sort of like just pure security in a lot of instances. And a lot of companies that are working on privacy-focused stuff is they're focused on building it directly into the back end of apps, or giving people platforms, developer platforms at least, where they can do so. So it's less so like a software package like McAfee was, and more so kind of how can we integrate things like zero-knowledge proofs and stuff like that directly into applications in an easy and sort of quick way. I think what's striking to me about this is I don't think, I think there are some industries that are interested in blockchain. Obviously, I do not think it's a panacea for everything, certainly. But with Travala here, I thought it was interesting that you're seeing an uptick in usage and, profits and people using crypto on it, right? I don't think it needs to be sort of a one fit size all for everything. But if they can like cater to their clients and people are responding to that and actually spending crypto in this way, I think that's interesting. I really want figures too on how Travala is doing, which we talked about on the show previously in months past, where it's sort of a decentralized Airbnb. I'd be really curious if there's a similar kind of uptick in those, just in the instance of we spoke about about it at the time, as you really want that centralized authority when it comes to things like Airbnb to, do some vetting, do some checking, like stop bad actors, et cetera, et cetera. But those are my initial thoughts on this one. Will, what you got?
Yeah, an alternate reading of this headline is Binance investment does very well in Q2. And I think this kind of points to like the larger movement we're seeing with some of these exchanges and these other crypto players is they are moving their investments not necessarily always into crypto. And of course, Travala has that other side component where they're trying to centralize Airbnb model, but they're also putting money in different locations, just like FTX is putting a lot of money into marketing for sports teams. They're kind of decentralizing where they put their investments, and that's just going to help bolster these firms if a bear market ever shows up.
Let's wrap on that note, because I saw the FTX logo at the MLB All-Star game last night, and I thought that was crazy. So anyway, update, breaking news. All right, cool. That's the end of the show.
No one cares about baseball, man.
Hey, man, just me out here. Go Giants, best team in baseball. Thanks, appreciate you guys. Good stuff. So that was the show. We'll be back for Thursday. The hash is great. CoinDesk TV, also great. CoinDesk.com is great too. Check it all out. We'll talk to you soon, and have a great Wednesday. See ya.
Happy Wednesday.
See you tomorrow.
Welcome back, Ben.